Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hey, nice to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for agreeing to doing this.
Absolutely.
Um, I personally love the film. It's one of my favorite comic book films out there.
Wow.
Um, I'm a massive fan of the Fantastic Four, and that's why what I'm doing with this series is trying to promote the release, trying to get the conversation started to try and push it to be released. So what I'm doing is speaking to cast and crew about their insights about it, any stories they might have, any little things that you wouldn't be able to find anywhere else in a sense.
Sure.
So
Yeah, well,
yeah,
we appreciate that. I mean, as you're aware, we have the petition, which has, I think it has about 6,200,
yeah,
6,000 signatures on it. And Marvel is obviously aware of us.
hmm
Pro- well, in part because of the petition, but before the petition as well. It's interesting that Vanity Fair, did a recent piece where they say that the writers and director of Fantastic Four First Steps all watched our film and, budget aside, thought it was quote unquote charming.
yeah,
We'll take that. So interesting.
yeah. Now,
Yeah, we hope they take the next step. They took a good first step, not only with the reboot of the franchise, but in inviting our Fantastic Four actors,
yeah,
the four of them, to cameo. That was you know a great acknowledgement
it
of the,
was.
and hopefully they'll take it a step farther because fans seem to want it.
That's the thing is that the fans, there's so many people out there that want this to happen that it's, you know, Marvel very much love their fan service throughout their films, with cameos and things like this. They've given the fans kind of, okay, you've been asking for this for a while, we'll give you it. For instance, an obvious one that comes to mind is John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic showing up in the second Doctor Strange film.
Yeah, fans
That was,
basically
yeah,
asked that
hmm
a year or more in advance, as I recall, or
yeah.
they were speculating or hoping.
And it came to fruition, and we got the fan service. Obviously, the character was killed off, but it was very much Marvel saying, "We heard you saying that you want this person to play this character. Here they are. Don't expect them to stick around." And I'm pretty sure they said that as well, because obviously they had in mind who they wanted to be Mr. Fantastic. Obviously, ended up being Pedro Pascal, who did a fantastic job of it. No pun intended.
Right, right. Yeah, I have sworn off the word fantastic when talking about our movie or First Steps. I caught myself going, "Oh, it's fantastic." The New York Times, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, stop saying fantastic. Everybody's using that word. So,
Yeah, it
I
is. It's the F word.
terrific. Yeah. So terrific is the way I've been going, but
I go with brilliant. I think
I'll
brilliant's
take
quite a,
sure.
brilliant. Try to
I think
avoid any word but
yeah,
fantastic.
I think brilliant may be kind of English, isn't it? Here it
Yeah.
means genius, but I think
Oh,
brilliant to you means well
great.
done
Yeah, it
or
means
something.
great.
Yeah,
It means,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's I
I'll
love a
take
bit of
either one.
Britishness.
Either definition works.
Yeah, because yeah, I mean, yeah, the films are brilliant. They are, they're genius craft in the art's beautiful.
Yeah.
Obviously you were the screenwriter for the 1994 F494 as I'm kind of conning that. I like that. The F494, you were the screenwriter, right?
Yes, yes, I was. I actually was the first hire on the movie. Um, Roger, who I had worked for before, um, thought I was the right person for it. And when I was asked about it, I immediately said, "Oh my God, I know these guys. These heroes, in fact,
Mm,
superheroes in general. Such a big part of my childhood, and even past childhood. And obviously now everybody is." For the past, what, 20 years, 15, 20 years, however long, Marvel has been doing this, creating the MCU.
yep.
Everybody's childhood is kind of reborn. So yeah, I was, very excited about the prospect of doing it. And then the German company had to okay me, which they did. Uh, and then the next meeting I had was with Stan Lee. So Um, and then I think the director came on at some point after that, after my first or second draft. So yeah, it was. I've been with this a little bit longer than everybody else, but
Yeah.
not much longer. A few months.
And I mean, meeting with Stan Lee, who obviously, co-created these heroes, I bet that was an amazing moment
It
because you
was.
just said
It was.
about,
Yeah, it was thrilling because I, of course, knew who he was from childhood. He was often, well, not often, but frequently included in some of the comic books,
yeah.
Marvel comics, in kind of cameos. And, of course, he had, I think it was called Stan's Soapbox or Bullpen or whatever it was, where
Mm,
at the back of a lot of the Marvel comic, where he would address the fans and say, "Hey, fans, hey, true believers, hey, this is what's blah blah blah. This is what's next. Be sure to check out this or that or the other." And once in a while, he pontificated and raised his voice socially. So I mean, in terms of racism and whatnot. But I absolutely knew who he was. I mean, he was um, almost as vivid as his characters in my mind.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so yeah, no, it was great to meet him, and we actually maintained a relationship for close to 20 years, I guess, right up until before his death, and then my emails started bouncing back as
mm,
around the time he was reported to being. So I don't know if somebody took his account over for him but anyway, um, yeah, no, and we worked on a second project years later together. He was the best way to describe him is he was everything you'd hoped he'd be. I mean, the voice you heard in writing, in the comics or in the bullpen soapbox,
yep.
that was him. He was just this great mix of Mark Twain and P.T. Barnum, and very very self-effacing, very self-deprecating. Um, and he was a writer. He was a real writer, and it was a pleasure. I worked from his movie treatment,
Yeah.
which not a lot of people know, um, because he's not credited on the film um, for whatever reason, and he was brought on as a consultant, which most people don't know. And that was really he was on the set several times, but really in terms of the script in the beginning. And I went through his treatment
Yeah.
with him and said, here's what I want to change for budgetary reasons. And I said, I got to tell you, and Roger had a similar conversation with the German production company that helped.
Yeah.
But I said, I got to tell you, we can't do a lot of these big action sequences with special effects. It's just the money is nowhere close to. And his response was, that doesn't matter. He said, everybody knows what they can do. They've seen what they can do in the comics. Represent it as best you can, but focus on character. That's the most important thing. And I said, I'm so glad to hear you say that, especially because also my training, my initial training was as a playwright
Yeah.
uh, at Carnegie Mellon. And so dialogue and people talking in a room, you know, as if a play was something I could bring to it, was dialogue. And he emphasized character, and that was, the other thing is, uh, at Stan sort of inadvertently maybe wrote the first Marvel post credit teaser
Mhm.
in his treatment, because at the very end of his treatment, which we didn't do again for budgetary reasons, was they're victorious. I don't think he had them getting married, but
Okay.
I added that because I knew from the comic books they did. So I said that
Yeah.
would be a sequence. But then sort of they're victorious, they get married. Uh, you know, that was my insert, and then going back to Stan's treatment, he wrote something along the lines of, "And the heroes are triumphant, bathed in the morning glow of the or in the evening glow of the sunset, and all of a sudden, whoosh, and he actually wrote whoosh, something something, a silver streak crosses the sky. What is it? Could it be? Yes, it is. And then capital letters, the Silver Surfer. Um, so that was the tease. But there was no way for 30 seconds. First of all, I wasn't sure how many people outside of hardcore Marvel fans would know the Surfer. There'd be no time to explain the Silver Surfer,
Mm.
just for these. And Roger was like, Corman was like, I'm not spending that money for 30 seconds at the very end. We're spent by then. We're done. And Stan was, he got it. He was not only a writer, but he understood the business.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I guess he made some bad deals early on, or sporadically throughout his career, or so he said. But yeah, so that was the other thing. He wrote the first post Marvel credit sequence, which
I love that.
we had to cut that for money.
That,
But
that's brilliant.
again, that was the thinking, is that there could be a sequel, a follow up, whether theatrical or direct to video, I guess, depending on how this would do if it was released.
If it was released, which is
Yeah,
obviously, the aim is to finally get it some kind of release. I really want to push it for something. I'd be happy with it just going on Disney Plus and being able to be streamed
absolutely.
properly, where people can actually sit there and watch it and not have to hunt for it or get like
Yeah.
a dodgy bootleg copy or something like that. Because, I've seen the film. I wasn't around when it was a big thing, and I've grown up loving the Fantastic Four. You find things like it's got a massive cult following.
It really
It
does.
really has.
I mean, I think Joseph Culp, our Doctor Doom, said it's probably, arguably, the most bootlegged movie in history,
Yeah.
and has to be considered one of the most seen or most popular, one of them, cult films.
Yeah.
Which we didn't
100%.
intend to make a cult film. Roger said something in an interview. He wasn't talking. I think this was, I don't know if this was before or after the Fantastic Four, but he was referring to filmmaking. It was an interview about filmmaking in general.
Yeah.
He's made some cult movies over the years. Little Shop of Horrors, for instance, Death Race 2000, um, some others. And what Roger said in this interview was, you can't make a cult movie.
No,
You don't know how to make a cult movie. The fans make the cult movie. And I think that's brilliant. And he could have been talking about, he wasn't, but he could have been talking about the Fantastic Four, because that's certainly what
definitely
happened.
the case. Yeah, it's one of those stories that you hear about and you just think it's so unbelievable that you start looking into it and you go, "Oh, wow, yeah, there's a whole film here." It's not like it was a project that was just shelved and that was it. The film was made. There was a score. Obviously, you wrote it. The characters are there, the costumes are there. It's a
Stan Lee was
full film.
involved. Stan,
Exactly. Yeah.
don't get much more Marvel than that. Certainly not 1994 or 92, 93, 94, whatever it was.
Yeah. It's just it is a crazy story at the end of the day because you know on paper you think, well, this, the film's great. I mean, like I said, I love the film. I know many other people that love the film as well, and it's an enjoyable film. I say to everybody, it's like watching something that's just pulled from a comic book. Like
Yeah.
that's how it feels. So the writing's excellent, and obviously knowing that you've got Stanley's treatment with it, Stan was on set, it's insane, because he, like you said, he is, Marvel Comics. You think of Stan Lee, you think of him sitting there in that chair with all these characters around him, and he was there, which means it had that. Well, he co-created the characters, and there he is, kind of watching these characters come to life, which I think was most likely an amazing experience for him as well.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, he loved Hollywood. And he, I think well, we know, in terms of the MCU, he had cameos
Yeah,
in almost every one, if not every one. But even before that, he would go to the set of the Incredible Hulk or the TV version of Spider-Man, and whatever else. I mean, these were his babies, whether
yeah,
he created them, co-created them, or oversaw them at Marvel. As the editor in chief, I think was his title, but everything passed his desk.
Yeah.
He didn't create them, so yeah, it was. And that was our intent, was to stick close to the origin,
Yeah.
meaning not only the origin story of the characters and their powers and how they came to be, but also just the origin, the innocence that the original comic book sort of had. I mean, we had Batman, Tim Burton's Batman,
Yeah.
by this time. I don't remember if Batman Returns had come out yet, but certainly prior to Tim Burton's Batman. Um, Comic books were Christopher Reeve or Adam West,
Yeah.
very brightly colored and had a certain innocence, about them, and that's what we aimed for, because that was also the tone of the original early comic books of the
Yeah.
Fantastic. Plus, which the budget, we just didn't have the money to go dark and brooding, and that would require a whole different, a
Yeah.
scale of treatment. And so, no, we embraced the true blue corniness, even, and we're unapologetic about it. We didn't want to go as over the top as Adam West's 1966 Batman. And no offense to Adam. Adam was a friend, and we worked together. But I loved that series. But we didn't want to go quite that far. But in
Yeah.
terms of that being a comic book brought to life with those colors, those vibrant colors, which still to this day, if you look at the old Batman series, they just pop.
They really do.
Yeah, and the innocence of the Christopher Reeve Superman,
Mm.
the first two movie. I mean, we were trying to, we weren't going Tim Burton. Um,
Yeah.
we were going, innocent, and certainly storytelling, not only in comic books but in comic book movies, superhero movies, has evolved a lot since then and gone through changes. But what's interesting is that First Steps is kind of a step. I don't want to say backwards, because not backward. Well, backwards in time, uh,
I know what you're
but
saying.
back a step back to the wholesome innocence
Yeah.
um, of of the comics,
The
and
feel good movies.
yeah, the feel good movies. And
Yeah.
in that respect, our film is kind of a good companion for that, especially for First Steps, especially because they didn't really do the origin story. I mean, they
Mm.
they summarized it.
Yeah.
We didn't experience it with the characters. We saw it in a newsreel or whatever it was, and that's another reason I hope and think Marvel should do something with
Yeah.
our, especially in connection with First Steps, or maybe Doomsday. I don't know exactly what the story is in Doomsday. We have an idea of it, but
Yeah.
it's a good companion piece. It doesn't contradict anything in First Steps, because you
No.
don't even see Doctor Doom until there's a tease at the end, and we assume that's Doctor Doom
Yeah.
talking to the kid, Sue and Reed's kid. But so Marvel, if you're paying attention, you did First Steps, and it was great. We were the baby steps, so do something with us.
I really hope they do. I think with the success that Fantastic Four has had and the kind of focus that people are now having on the Fantastic Four. So like people going into comic book shops, picking up Fantastic Four comics and diving into the history of the characters and really, connecting to them. I mean, the community is blown up. There's that many
It
people
really
that are
has.
loving them now.
It really has. I mean, I've um, even before First Steps, I was aware
Yeah.
of some of the fan sites and stuff, and I'd look at them occasionally, especially if a Google alert said our film was mentioned, I'd go check it out. But boy, the past 2 weeks, there have been so many articles that reference us or even about us. The New York Times, Vanity Fair, London's, I think it's London's Independent, or The Independent. Um, it's just, and then blogs and podcasts, and it's just last 2 weeks. There have been dozens, and mostly positive.
Yeah,
You know, giving giving our film the credit and due we think it deserves,
definitely.
seen through the lens of the time and place in movie making and the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, because nobody's, including any of us involved, is going to deny that special effects were not very special. I mean, CGI. I don't even think CGI had come into being yet, or was not widely used.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have you know, that luxury, but you know, again, like Stan said, character. Try to focus on character, and that's, you know,
And I think
yeah.
that like it really nails it with the characterizations of the characters. Like, you can tell Reed and Ben are like best mates, they'll
Yes,
do anything
yes,
for each other. And then you've got, Sue and Ben, you've got their relationship. And then, the Johnny's character is perfect in my eyes because he is just, he's kind of having fun with it. He doesn't take it as like, oh my gosh, I love the bit where they're all getting like the blood test done.
yes,
That little montage
yeah.
of
It's
the
fun.
four of them, and and then it's the little effect of Reed's arm just stretching across,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's
yeah,
just it looks brilliant.
yeah. Listen, in terms of the special effects being not so special, I gotta say, to this day, I think our thing looks
Oh yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, I said,
oh
oh, I
yeah.
just fantastic,
No, no, you can say
terrific.
fantastic there. It
Yeah.
looks amazing.
To this day, I think the new one in the first steps also looks damn good. Although it's slightly evolved, I think, from the early comic books. We were literally, our thing was literally ripped from the pages of those early comic books, and I think the guys did a great job. And our Doctor Doom, I think, looks,
Oh yeah, the Doctor Doom costume. Wow.
yeah, I think it was better than the big screen studio incarnations
Mm,
seen of Doctor Doom, which, if I remember correctly, and I didn't see the last, what was it, 2015 Trask. I did not see that,
mm.
uh, just based on what everybody was saying. And, I'd seen the first two, saw the first one in the theater, and I thought it was good. Thought it was okay. It didn't wow me, but and the second one I saw at home, and that was, okay too. I mean, they weren't offensive in any way, but my point being is, if I'm remembering correctly, Doom Doom didn't look exactly like Doom did in the comics, unless I'm not
Mm.
remembering
They
correctly.
they made him very naughties looking with like more of like they didn't give him the classic. I mean, honestly, about the 94 film, the classic Doom look just looks so good. Like
Yeah,
it works perfectly. And in that film as well, it works brilliantly because the costumes they pop on the screen. The Fantastic Four costumes with like the big four on like their chest that goes like it's a massive four.
yeah, it
And then,
is.
then you've got, as we were saying, the Thing costume, which looks spectacular. I think it really looks good. And people are, oh, but the mouth is like, yeah, but that's part of the beauty of it. It's got that kind of puppet mouth in a sense.
Yeah, yeah,
But the Doctor Doom suit, with the way it looks, the way it moves in a sense, the way that Joseph brought that costume to life, because
well,
it's
yeah, and
very
that's
difficult with a mask on.
absolute, and that's been something that's kind of been a common denominator in a lot of,
Mm,
retrospective appreciations. Look back, is that Joseph was Shakespearean, which is, I don't know how I saw Doom, as this grandiose, egotistical, maniacal, but had a real motivation
yeah,
uh, to do what. Anyway, yeah, I mean, people universally seem to uh, love Joseph uh, in and out of the costume, and that
yeah.
relationship with Reed, without
Mm.
White, early on in the film, I think, I listen. I shouldn't say it's great because I wrote it, but they acted it. They were the ones who gave it life. And anyway, I was very happy with
Yeah.
that. we don't have any MCU incarnation yet of Doom to compare it to. I'm sure Robert Downey will be magnificent.
Oh yeah.
If he can get over the fact that he was Iron Man, but he's a phenomenal actor. So
I have
I
good hopes.
suspect they all know what they. Yeah, I suspect they all know what they're doing.
Yeah. And you were just saying about the relationship between Reed and Victor, and I loved the first kind of scene where, they're in the classroom and they're passing back and forth the piece of paper frantically.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah. And
Victor's passing it and he's scribbling something out and ripping something else and then passing it back. It's
Of Colossus, a radioactive comet-like energy source traveling in 10-year orbits that tonight will be closest to Earth that it will ever come. So close, in fact, that it will pass through the heart of the Van Allen belt, slow to the speed of the Earth's rotation, and becomes visible to the human eye. So bring your telescopes, bring your imaginations, and above all, have fun. That's it. Class dismissed.
Oli Sassone did not fantastic. Oh, I just said it again. Fantastic job throughout. But I always loved that sequence, the way he did that with the notes, just like you're coming out. It's very well directed.
It is, because it gives the classroom, like, it gives you a classroom vibe in a sense where you've got that, that's what you used to do with your mates. I mean, to be fair, I didn't used to write down like scientific equations and build in, there's some to channel Colossus, but similar thing, passing notes to your friends was always something that you did at school.
Or copying the answers. Yeah, at least for me, when it came to math, because I shouldn't have really even passed algebra. Frankly, I just have no head for that. But speaking of the classroom and Reed and Victor as students, in my first draft, yeah, Ben was also there, but
Yeah.
Sue and Johnny were not kids as they were in
Okay.
the books, and as they ended up being in our movie,
Mm.
which people felt it was straying too far from the comics. I always felt that was odd, in terms of her being like 12 or something. And I mean, a
Mm.
lot of people, fans have said it's kind of odd that, they join, Reed and Ben on their space expedition, and that Reed hooks up and with Susan, who he met when he was 12. It's just there's a
Yeah.
creepy vibe. It's just, I mean, there was no intent of creepiness by anybody, in the comics or our film. But in my first and maybe second draft, I can't remember. Basically, it was freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Meaning Reed and Victor were seniors or graduate students, and Johnny was a freshman, Sue was a sophomore, and Ben was a junior, and they were
Mm.
therefore all qualified and all learning about Colossus and science and whatnot. And the other thing, again, speaking of classroom stuff or the university setting, was early on is that there was a subplot which everybody said, no, it's really interesting, but let's just get to it. Let's not.
Yeah.
The thought was they were working on this invention that was funded by an unknown benefactor to the school, which turned out to be Latveria.
Mm.
Really, these students, these scientists, were working for the good of man. They thought, to harness this energy. But the government, even of Latveria, was using the scientists as puppets. They didn't know what they were really, why they were really doing it. They thought one thing,
Yeah.
and I thought that was a really interesting subplot that the government can use scientists and
Yeah.
speak whatnot, as a means to something, as it means to a weapon, as opposed to a means to good. But
Yeah.
in terms of what happened to us That's exactly what happened to us. We were the kids, so to speak, you know, doing something we thought was positive and good and we had no idea that the shadowy forces behind the film, meaning Constantine, had another intention for our work,
Yeah.
which was to use it in a different way. So that subplot, which didn't make it to the movie, actually, kind of was pathetic because that's what was happening to us. We
Yeah.
didn't know.
And it's a shame that that did happen. Like, it is a massive shame. And I do really hope that, with enough audience and enough people going, yeah, that would be really awesome to see this come to life again. Bring it to be like an actual event, like a massive event. Going, look, here's the Fantastic Four 1994 film. You know, it's been hidden away somewhere for like 31, 32 years. It's time to bring it into a place where people can enjoy it without having to kind of sneak around to find it.
Right. And listen, what you've seen, online or on YouTube or comic book conventions, those are bootlegs and bootlegs of bootleg, and there are better versions out there, that people have upscaled and whatnot, but I'm confident that Marvel has the real
Yeah.
print that is, you know, that is the quality it should be. Um, you can see it in the trailer that Roger had cut and released to theaters.
Yeah.
Still exists. It's on YouTube or wherever. But Marvel, I'm confident Marvel has our film locked up in a vault somewhere, like the Ark of the Covenant at the end of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it would be great for them to, you know, it would cost pennies by today's standards to upgrade some of those effects. Um, Hell, the bands could do it probably with everybody with the technology that exists today with AI and stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, and I know Joseph would love to re-record his dialogue, so because he was, that wasn't done in the sound studio afterwards. That was him
Yeah.
talking the mask, and as good as it was, I know he wants. Anyway, the point is, I hope they do something with it. And I got to tell you, the day after I found out it wasn't going to be released, which was just crushing. And then the truth being what the truth
Yeah.
is borne out. I remember I was sitting in Johnny Rockets with an old friend of mine, talking about it, and I was just, oh, I was depressed. I was crushed by it. But I do remember saying to him, I know it'll eventually see the light of day somehow, some way, someday. I don't know if I'll be here for it. It could be 50 years, 100. I mean, filmmakers don't destroy film.
No.
They just don't.
No.
In spite of what the former head of Marvel said, he released the same. So I bought it and I burned it. Okay. I don't know whether he burned something or not, or whether that was a figure of speech, but I'm sure it exists.
It's got to exist somewhere.
I'm sure it does. And yeah, hopefully Marvel's listening. Hopefully Marvel's. I know they're paying attention, to the articles and whatnot, and they did a wonderful thing by inviting our four leads to cameo.
Yeah. And that means that they do know it exists and they're
Yeah,
aware of the reception it would receive.
yeah, and it's a huge nod,
Yeah.
and we're very appreciative of it, especially given the fact that Marvel didn't actually bury it,
Yeah.
but certainly hasn't done anything until now to acknowledge or resurrect it. But now they've done something in a fairly significant way. So
Yeah.
because you know what, I'll quote Stan: "With great power comes great responsibility." Marvel has an enormous platform, and it's
They do.
very influential and powerful. And I think they did the responsible thing, given they honor the history of their characters.
100%.
So Good for them. Good for us.
And in my eyes, they wouldn't invite them to the premiere if they didn't want to go, look, we know they exist, because they could have just had cameos in the film
Yeah.
and that'd be that. Because, cameos that happen, you don't always have the people that cameoed come to premieres,
No.
especially in the way that they did. It was very publicized. It was very like photos were taken.
Yep.
Rebecca met Vanessa, Alex met Pedro. There was all this where they
Absolutely.
made it known that they're the legacy. They made it known that these guys are the original four.
Yeah.
Why would
Yeah.
they do that?
Talk about a multiverse. The multiverse exists in terms of the premiere, and have
There's three. There was three Mr. Fantastics.
That's right. There were.
Yeah, Ewan Grufford was there.
I don't know if there's a picture of all three of them. There should be.
That would have been brilliant.
Yeah, but we can we can hope. I mean, I know fan hopes are that
They're high.
point there's a council of reeds, I think, which was, I think that was in the comics.
Yeah,
and where you have these different reeds from different timelines,
loads different.
and Marvel has what, 4 or 5 reads for
so many now.
Hopefully they'll include Joseph.
Yeah,
Doom in some capacity, whether he's playing Doctor Doom or just some other,
or just
in Doomsday. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I hope something comes from all this. If not, I've had the pleasure to speak with people, and that is brilliant for me because I'm a massive fan. So it's brilliant because I get this.
Yeah, no, it's great because over and the fans have kept this alive. I don't know how the original bootleg got out. There are all sorts of theories. I don't think anybody but the person who did it, whoever that is, and he may not have even been part of the movie but had access. But they're the only ones who know. But thank God they did what they did, and the fans took it from there for 30 years. And every once in a while, there's a surge. Not like the current one, which was more of a tidal wave in terms of recognition and appreciation. It's we're all in contact.
Yeah, and I love that.
The editor, myself, the producers of Doomed, the documentary, we're all in an email chain, and we've all appreciated everything, and then we do look at things and read things and share things with each other. So,
and that's amazing. The community inside of such an interesting story. You've got everyone's keeping in contact. Everyone's going, look at this. This is coming up now. I really do have high hopes for this. It's something that I really want. I know you guys obviously really want it as well, because it's a credit to you guys. But it's it deserves its day in a sense.
Yeah, I mean it's history, superhero history, and to a certain extent, cinema history, because the story behind the movie is just
so outlandish.
I mean, looking back, in a sense, I believe that Constantine, the German production company, used our film as a sales tool with 20th Century Fox to say, look, this is $1 million. I mean, you get it. You didn't get it before because he couldn't get studios interested. You get it now, and in that sense, I don't know that this has ever happened before, but our movie was essentially used as a pilot, like they do in television. They'll do a pilot, test it out with test audiences, decide what they like, and then not all the time, but oftentimes, then reshoot the quote unquote first episode of. In fact, I think Seinfeld was. I think they reshot that show or parts of it. I don't think Julia Louis-Dreyfus was in it originally, and somebody said, "Yeah, this is what we need to do." And if I'm misspeaking about Seinfeld, it's happened with other shows. But our movie, I really believe, was essentially used as a pilot, like a TV pilot is used.
Yeah,
that's. I don't think that's ever happened before.
No, and it's mental to think about how much effort has gone into the film as well. Like the amount
I
of effort that went
wouldn't
into it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken the job had I known the truth because, um, eh, to me, it wasn't a paycheck,
Mm.
uh, even though there was a paycheck. Uh, I was not dependent on that paycheck, and, coming out of the theater, um, in Chicago and then through Carnegie Mellon, I'm all about reaching an audience. To me, that's what's so gratifying about
Yeah.
the whole process. Yeah, money is nice, and yes, I want to be paid, but I want listen. I did theater in Chicago. I wrote a couple plays, directed them. They were produced, um, and I was thrilled if 50 people were in the audience because my words and the actor's work and the producer, it was reaching
Yeah.
somebody, and that's enormously gratifying. You know, novelists, work alone,
Yeah.
um, and can read back their own work and be gratified by it. Playwrights, screenwriters, we collaborate, we need the actors
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
director, and you know what I mean. That's what it's all about, and so yeah, it's so I wouldn't have taken the job had I known. Now, who would have thought? Well, I guess we all hoped, but that it would eventually have the kind of life it's had.
Mm.
Now, now I'm glad that I did.
And
I
that's
wasn't
nice to hear.
when I wasn't when I found out the truth, I wasn't. I was like, I never would have done this.
Hmm.
But balls can take funny bounces sometimes, and this one took um, a positive, hoped for bounce, but certainly wasn't expected. Certainly not Marvel um, offering cameos
Yeah.
to our actors. And this time I will use the word, and that is fantastic.
Because it is fantastic. And with the notoriety it's been getting and with people going, I mean, there's people that saw these cameos and saw Marvel going, yeah, the original four in there, and they go, wait a second, what? The original four?
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, they go back and they find it and they go, there's a 1994 Fantastic Four film, and then they look into the history, they find the story, they realize what happened, they go, oh. And then if you search the Fantastic Four 1994 film, the change.org petition comes up and it's there. You can just sign it. I've signed it. I've got everyone that I know to sign
Yes.
it.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I've pushed it as well on my company's
Because,
FB page and
yeah,
the Fantastic Four website, FB site I go to, and pushed it there, and I know others have uh, as well. And yeah, I mean, uh, with the coverage over the past 2 weeks, London's Independent, New York Times, Vanity Fair.
yeah,
I mean, it is reaching more people
it's getting there.
than it ever has before. I mean, the knowledge of what happened, and that I do attribute, well, yes, to the fans keeping it alive, but I attribute the recent surge to Marvel. I mean, they they did the right thing.
Yeah,
They did a good thing,
they
and
really did.
yeah,
And it'll be amazing. And like you said when you said about it, hopefully coming out, and if it's not in the 50 years or 100 years, I'd love it to make it so it comes out, you know,
next
next
week.
year, next week. Yeah, next week. Let's do a press tour. I'm going to cancel everything.
Listen, there are a handful of people uh,
Definitely.
in the mainstream media and podcast media and the blog media, who have been staunch supporters of this.
It'd be amazing to get
Going all
everyone
the way
together.
back to Film Threat magazine, which was on the set, when we were filming. So there have been people who have, and by the way, the documentary Doomed, uh,
Mm.
which was produced by our assistant casting director during the
Hmm.
Fantastic Four. Um, Fantastic film, and that is also, he kept it out there
Yeah.
uh, in a very specific way, more detailed way than any of the articles can hope to do, given their space. Uh,
Yeah.
so thank goodness for them, as well. So
Yeah, it's amazing how happy everyone is to keep it alive as well. But it's a love of mine. I like to name it as like guilty pleasure. Like it's a film that I absolutely adore.
yeah.
And I'll show everybody it.
In terms of it being a guilty pleasure, to use your phrase, there's nothing wrong with that in
No.
this case, anyway. But the guilt part, is probably pertains to the budget. But in which case, I'll circle back to kind of where we began with Stan, which was I said, we can't do these big secret, and he said that's everybody knows, everybody's seen the comic books, everybody knows, and that's something about our film which wasn't necessarily intended, but was kind of essential given our effects. You use your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain amount in the same way kids, myself included, didn't took Adam West's 1966 Batman very seriously. I mean, I didn't see it in the original run. I wasn't born yet, but in reruns after when I was 10. But there's a certain amount of imagination that you bring to it when it's not all laid out before you in CGI, and which I'm not putting down by any means, but there is something nice about bringing your own imagination.
Yeah, I think going into older projects, you have to be very open-minded. You have to understand that, it's a product of the time. Like it is, you wouldn't watch a film like a black and white picture and expect like, CGI things like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, as a kid, with the Hulk and the Spider-Man, that was a brief series.
Yeah.
And even something, which I loved, and well, again, come full circle back to Joseph, called The Greatest American Hero. Those, which Joseph's father was the co-star, Robert Culp, fantastic actor. And that, for me, that show, the effects were even at the time. Obviously they reused flying shots that were obviously done against the screen. They weren't the best, and some of the fast motion effects were just speeding up the film. But it didn't matter. You brought your imagination to it because you cared about those two lead characters played by William Catt and Robert Culp and their interaction, which I've always thought was brilliant. And it was a pleasure for me to be able to tell Joseph that, because I never met his father. But yeah, you bring, as a kid, I would bring, and I think it's probably true of everybody, even with Saturday morning cartoons, or would be Saturday morning cartoons. You bring your imagination. You do the rest.
Yeah. Here's this. Build off of it. Enjoy it, and just let your mind run. I think the best thing about the F494 is it's, like I said, it's like it's ripped straight from comic book. You've got that comic book vibe. You have to keep, you have to use your imagination while reading a comic book. Not everything's there on the page. As much as possibly can be is on the page, but they can't put everything there. So you have to connect the dots. You have to think. You see, I don't know, the Fantastic Car, for example, comes flying past and lands at the Baxter Building. You've got to imagine what it sounds like. How heavy it'd be. The impact when it lands. Is it going to be like a smooth landing? Is it just going to float down? And that's the beauty of comic books at the end of the day. And even with the newer MCU films, you still got to make some things up in your imagination, thinking, right, okay, this point A, this is point C. Let me, make point B. Let me create it for myself. And that's what makes it enjoyable.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I love about the 1994 film is the bit where the Thing is like in like the prison thing, not a prison, like the lab, and there's those guys, and and the camera spins really fast, and that's the fight scene, and I love it because
that had to be the fight scene, given time and money. But That's very comic book
Mm-hmm.
oriented. I can't say it was necessarily, you'd have to ask Oli, by design to be comic book. It was kind of necessity.
Yeah.
But it ends up being kind of faithful, to the, comic books. I mean, we didn't go as far as, again, Adam's Batman with a bam zap pow.
Pow.
I loved that as a kid. I was
Yeah,
like,
I love that.
that's, and what's funny is that, when Stan would send a note or a Christmas card or whatever, he always doodled on them. If it was like a store-bought card or something, he would draw over the card and put in thought bubbles and dialogue bubbles. I have one where it's Spider-Man speaking to me, saying, "Hey, Craig, have a happy, holiday," and
Yeah.
and it's all very comic book, and that's, I think, whether he meant this in general or specifically, I don't know. But when he said, "Don't worry, you do what you can, represent, with the effects, represent their powers," but everybody knows, they've read the comics, and in a sense, that's saying bring your imagination,
Yeah.
um, to it. I mean, to a certain extent, I think that maybe kids today, I don't know, growing up on the current fare, maybe they don't get a chance to really work those muscles,
Yeah.
because which doesn't mean the current movies don't instill a sense of wonder and inspiration and awe, but it's all right there for the most part. It's all right there in front of you, and
Yeah.
listen, given the chance, I would do it that way too. The way their MCU
Yeah.
is, but yes, well, the guilty pleasure is you do part of the work.
Yeah, and it's the fun part as well. It's not you don't have to really think too hard. It's very much just going, this is how this happened. One thing that I loved, circling back to First Steps as well, is the montage at the start. It's very much just like, this is what happened, this is this, this is this. And it gives you little snippets of what's going on, but you can use your imagination to build off on that. And another thing I loved as well was they did a prequel comic for the film, which I thought was really smart.
I understand that. I have not seen it, but
Oh, it's good.
there is. I will.
Very good.
It's on my list of things to check out, but I haven't seen it yet.
It is good. It is very good. And that just connects a couple more dots, but then again, you still get that chance to think. And I think I said think twice. I think that's truly, a beautiful thing when it comes to the arts is, here's not everything. You can fill in the blanks. You can enjoy it for yourself. And like I said, with the fight scenes in F494 with the camera spinning, but you can hear like the punching noises.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can only imagine what's going on. You
Yeah.
know, it's the thing. He's fighting people. It's clobbering time.
So listen, going back to Hitchcock and Psycho, I think that was shadows and sound, the shower. You didn't see anybody get, stabbed.
And it was chocolate syrup, wasn't it, as well, for the blood?
That could be. I don't recall that.
It makes sense, and it's the beauty of cinema. At the end of the day, it's a place where your mind goes to wander. I don't watch a film to think, right, okay, let me take some proper big life lessons from this, unless that's the kind of film I'm watching. But
Right.
with superhero films, it's escapism at the end of the day. It's joining, especially again with the MCU, especially joining these characters that you've watched for years and seeing where they are, seeing what they're doing, and like it's escapism. And the 1994 film is like escaping into a comic book. It's like opening like a classic comic book and just diving straight into it.
Yeah.
With the visuals, the dialogue, the characterizations, all this, it just adds up. And it's in a sense, it's a very classic Fantastic Four adventure as well. The four go and face Doom.
Yeah.
That's a classic Fantastic Four, story.
But you know what?
Was a big bad.
I think people will be surprised at some point in their lives. Maybe you're there, maybe not. But there are lessons and there are things to learn in these, even though it is escapism, and you're not necessarily going to the movies for that. You look at something like Star Trek. There's a lot, especially the movies. I mean, the series too.
Yeah.
The original, with Shatner, and just something, as comic book like at the time, I thought,
Mm.
as the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, which was a mantra that was repeated throughout two or three of the films. And boy, later on in life, I came to understand that in ways. Well, listen, Stan. With great power comes great responsibility. I mean, these. You know, I don't think anybody's hitting anybody over the head with it, but they're there.
Yeah.
They're there.
Yeah.
And I think you're getting it, whether I think the audiences are getting it, whether they realize it at the moment.
Although very subconsciously, it's kind of
Yeah,
being filtered in.
yeah, yeah.
It's been absolutely brilliant to have you here, Craig. Thank you.
Well, we'll all be watching.
And yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything.
and you have an amazing rest of your day. No, sorry. You have a fantastic rest of your day.
And I will. You too.
And I'm sure we'll be in contact again.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. You look after yourself.
See ya.
Bye bye now.